Welcome to Lending Forward, a podcast where we're lending every bit of what we know to our listeners. From real conversations and lessons learned deep within the industry to education and forward thinking. Together, we're lending forward. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to our channels and connect with us on www.atlanticbay.com. Atlantic Bay Mortgage Group, LLC, NMLS number 72043, NMLSconsumeraccess.org is an equal opportunity lender located at 600 Lynn Haven Parkway, Suite 203, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23452. Honestly, thank you for joining us today. I know you're good. I know Atlantic Bay loves your presence. We love your mastery. Are you celebrating? It's been 20 years of something for you. What are you celebrating? Not mastery. 30.
So there's two. So first of all, the 20th anniversary is the 20th year since I wrote and released High Trust Selling. So we have a business book, Taylor, that is unheard of, that 20 years later, it's still selling. That fact and that stat is like crazy, because a business book usually lasts, I don't know, if it's a good book, a couple of years. If it's a great book, it'll get a run like we have. But it all goes back to the people that read it, and the interesting thing about high trust selling and why I think it still sells is the laws haven't changed. 14 laws of high trust selling. What are those laws and how do they work today? And somebody said, don't you think you need to change the laws? And I said, there are laws that are never going to change. Like, you kill somebody, you're going to jail. You could do 100 miles an hour on a freeway, you're going to get a ticket. All right. I mean, there's laws, right? They never change. And so I often tell people that the way I knew the laws would not change is I just had a filter. The filter was, if I were to die the day after the book got released, would the laws last 100 years? And that was my filter. People call me crazy, but I was saying, well, that's a legacy move. If there's books right now on my bookshelf behind me, or behind you, I guess, or however, but I have 3 books that from the date of publishing till now, 412 years. These books were written in the 1800s, and stuff just doesn't change, even though everything changes. So that's the 20-year. The 30-year is sales mastery. So we're celebrating the 30th year that we've held the sales mastery event. And it's unbelievable. We've had 76,000 loan officers and realtors. Wow. And if you take a look at the 30-year run, and you take a look at every loan officer working with 20 real estate agents, and those real estate agents do 20 deals a year, sales mastery has impacted 70 million buyers, sellers, agents, and loan officers. And it's just like, wow. So here we go. We're going to celebrate 30 years this year. And it's pretty crazy to have a seminar brand that has lasted 3 decades. It's
incredible.
And
I think we're obviously planning to go. I think it's something that for me, it'll be my first, which I'm excited. So I certainly can't wait. But I think it really all boils down to things are changing and yet they stay the same. So with your industry insight and how many years you've been in the industry, you've probably navigated waters and climates much like what we're facing right now, right? So how is it that we can coach our mortgage bankers and agents through them? Because they don't know what tomorrow holds. And I know they're all kind of panicked. What have you seen and how can we reassure these folks?
So interrupt me anytime you want during this answer, because I have no idea how long it's going to take, but I have a perspective. So the first thing that comes to mind is, if anybody right now in the business has had any glimpse of the news at any time in the last, 6 or 7 months, we know that they have used this phrase that the current economy has not been this bad since 40 years ago. And 40 years ago was just a couple years before I became a loan officer. And so when I became a loan officer, the market that I was in, prime was 20%, FHA and VA loans were 17%, 5 or 6 points. If you did a weighted piggyback first and second mortgage, it was about 18.5%. Unemployment was 13%. Consumer confidence was in the tank. We were in the middle of a full-blown recession. Gas lines were a mile long. And that's the economy that everybody in the news refers to today, right? Mm-hmm. So I think I'm an authority on this. And so the interesting thing is, when I got into the business, everybody felt the sky was falling. It was like there was negativity everywhere. And I had this beautiful gift from my grandmother in my life where she gave me a book, and the book was entitled Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. And I'm going to tell you, even though you just said everything changes, it does, but there's some things that never change, and that is your outlook. right? Your outlook generally is either going to be optimistic or pessimistic. So what we know about attitude is the authors say there's very little difference between those who succeed and those who fail. But the little difference makes the big difference. The little difference is attitude, and the big difference is whether it's positive or not. So in 1982, I had a 4-inch button made up. It was bright green, and the button said, "Rumor has it we're in a recession. I'm not participating." And so my intention when I would call on realtors and sit with borrowers is I gave them a positive dose of, you know what, we can play or we won't play. I mean, it's whatever you want to think, whatever you want to look at, whatever your perspective is, you can have that perspective. But if it's negative, you're not going to sell real estate. If it's negative, you're not going to go out and call on realtors. If it's negative, you're probably not going to do a lot of loans, because how are you going to give a borrower hope when interest rates are that cray-cray, right? And I just chose a different pathway. I chose that pathway, and I chose it because of my grandma, and I chose it because if everybody's thinking the sky is falling, think about how much competition gets stripped out of the equation, because nobody's going to make calls. Well, nobody's buying real estate. Who would buy real estate at 17%? Nobody. So why would I go out in the office, in the field? And so that was the first thing I would just say to everybody, that markets come and go. They're good markets. There's hard markets. There's easy markets. There's confusing markets. It doesn't really matter what market we have going on. What matters, I believe, Taylor, is what's the decision we make in the market we're in. And the decision that I made in that market, and the decision that I would tell people to make in this market, is step up your value, step up your game, call on real estate agents now that haven't had loan officers working with them for the last 2 years. Get there before everybody else realizes that that's where I have to be. And not that the real estate agent is the only market, but it's a market right now that is going to produce purchase business. Outside of that, at Sales Mastery this year, we're going to talk about all these new vertical markets. But if everybody today thinks the economy is bad, I'm going to tell you right now, probably 6 or 7 out of every 10 LOs wake up pessimistic. And great study from Martin Seligman, who's the professor of happiness at Penn State. He said that those people who see the glass as half full in any situation will outperform those who see it as half empty in any situation by a minimum of 42%. So just think about that. I can outperform my competition who's negative by being positive by almost 50%. So that's what I tell people today. It's not too terribly difficult. And whatever seeds we plant right now are going to come to massive fruition next year and the year beyond. And so we got to get back to hunting. Our skills are a little bit soft and dull. We've had this manna from heaven, refis falling from the sky. And nobody thought this market would reverse like it reversed. To have a 300 basis point increase in interest rates in 100 days is pretty scary. So that's my initial thoughts.
It is so much about how you treat each situation and how you wake up and know, okay, today I know that I have to flex my selling muscle and I have to be creative about it and educate. What are some tips that for creating longevity? And we know branding and social and digital is so important and video is so important. What are some ways or tips, I guess you could say, that you can provide for mortgage bankers and agents alike, or anybody in sales right now, to create that longevity for their whole career?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, it's really interesting because I've been asked this question since we started the company in 1992. And I've even had people go so far as to say, realtors aren't loyal. And it's interesting because the truth is nobody's loyal unless there's a reason to be loyal, right? And the reason to be loyal has to do with the value that the relationship produces. I've had a lot of situations in the last couple of even weeks, breakfast last Friday with a top producing LO. And the interesting thing is that most people in the business don't understand that to have loyalty, I need to produce value. And to value the loyalty, I need to receive the reciprocity, right? Mm-hmm. So there's never a relationship, period, where both people don't want it. So the first piece of advice is get into relationship with the people you like, the people that are productive. We tell people all the time, Life's too short to do business with people you don't like. You're setting yourself up for failure. You're never going to make follow-up calls on somebody you don't like. It's like courting, right? It's like, right. It's that whole deal. So when we understand loyalty, then what we have to do is really demonstrate it. And I think this is important. I'm getting ready to do a video probably Thursday, and it's kind of a mid-year correction video. It's a mid-year kind of business plan correction. But it's really fascinating that, like, let's say 3 years ago, before super low rates, you had 10 real estate agents and you were working with them, adding value, finding out what they need, the age-old sales of 100, right? Find out what people need, give it to them. And let's say that out of that relationship, they were able to produce 2 buyers a week for you to have a conversation with. So if you look at that math, 10 agents at 2 buyers a week would produce 80 borrower consultations for a loan originator per month. And if 1 out of every 4 of those converted to a TRID-triggered loan and 90% of those closed, you'd close about 180 units a year, help about 180 families a year. So here we are in an economy today, much, much different, much worse in a lot of ways. But let's just say you want to keep building the business. You're not going to let the market define you. You're going to define what you are in this market. So then I might either A, go back to those 10 and say, how can we generate more together so I can have more conversations with borrowers? Or I might say the season right now, real estate's kind of cooling off in some places, other places it's still an insane seller's market. We're probably not going to have a balanced seller-buyer market until the middle of 2023. So maybe today I expand my net. Maybe I add 10 more realtors, and maybe I take the number per week down for all of them to 1. So if I can go from 10 to 20, and then I take it from 2 referrals a week down to 1, I still have the same business volume. And I think that's the adjustment a lot of people don't make, is they don't look at the elasticity of a market and determine that, maybe right now, appreciation last year across America was just shy of 18%. This year it's forecasted to be just a tad above 4%. So real estate's still appreciating. But buyers are getting edged out right now. Affordability is edging buyers out right now. We need a market correction. We need seller values to come down and get back in alignment with, where we really are. And if we do that, then the mid-year business plan says, let's get those 20 people locked and loaded by, the end of June. And then we're ready to go. In the market, whatever the market does, you're going to be better off if you have that plan. So those are a couple of things I tell people. The other thing is when we look at one of the things that I think just gets overlooked all the time, I just simply call it the +1. And people go, what's +1? Well, +1 is let's treat every borrower today in such a way that their consumer experience is so off the grid. Phone calls, videos, stay in touch messaging, not automated marketing that doesn't work, not stuff we just send out. I mean, really personalized experience. And at the end of that time, when they give you a 4.5, 4 3/4, 5-star rating, do you know how many loan officers don't ask for a referral right then? Probably 99% of the industry.
Sure. Yeah.
So I say to people, if you're on track to do 80 fundings this year, what would happen if you just added the +1 strategy and you went to 160, and then next year you add the +1 and you go to 320? We have 2 women that are going to be on stage at Sales Mastery this year that combined funded 1,050 loans last year.
Wow.
So everybody needs to understand that your greatest advocate, your greatest referral engine is in the people that have used you, that give you the ratings. And it's like if a processor calls or an LOA calls during processing and says, hey, just checking in. It's Danny at ABC Financial, kind of a mid-process survey. Just want to find out if everything's going okay from your end. Is there anything we're not doing that we should do? And if you're doing it right, you're going to hear, no, you guys are great. No, you guys are great. Well, right then and there, the LOA should ask for a referral, and if I have to comp the LOA, fine. But like when somebody says, no, you're doing great, muscle memory says, awesome. Who else do you know in the next, 3, 6, 9 months might be buying or selling real estate that we could contact using your name and give them the same experience you've enjoyed? Can you imagine if everybody in the loan business just did that as a muscle on every loan? It'd be crazy. And I think that's one of the things that is going to change the future of our business. I think more and more what we're going to see is the volume that LOs have to business plan around is going to become more and more predicated on the database, the borrowers you have served previously, and their sphere of influence. Because what's happening is the buyer-realtor connection modality has changed, right? It used to be buyer goes to realtor, realtor finds property. And now it's buyer finds property, decides whether they want to go Redfin or with an agent or with, any of these other new kind of agent startups. And you got to make a decision right then and there that I got to get to the buyer first. So if I can blow the experience away for the buyer, then one of the questions is a simple question. Do you have a professional relationship with a real estate agent? It's either going to be yes or no. If it's yes, then as an LO, I get to prospect that agent if I want to. If it's a no, then I need to call one of my agents and say, hey, I got the Johnsons on. They're qualified for a $640,000 purchase and they're ready to meet you. Pretty straightforward.
I know, but like you said, 99% of folks aren't doing this. And I think a big piece of it too is, like you said, just training your muscle to just say, okay, and multiple times throughout the process, that's okay too. You take 30 days. Cool. That's perfect. I can maybe think of 3 times you can ask for the referral. And that's people. And in the review, why don't people ask for the review? I just, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it because a lot of them aren't going to closings, or do they? Because I'm always preaching, okay, the last week while they're trolling their email, making sure everything is going smoothly, that's when you come in for the review. That's when you need to ask for it, because they're all still real happy and they're waiting, again, trolling their emails. So it's the perfect time. Even in a text message, send them a quick text with a video of you saying, thank you, Todd. I really enjoyed our podcast today. I would love it if you came and left me a review. Here's the link. It's all easy access. One click in, done. Why don't you think people are doing that?
I think there's a couple things that come to mind. Number one, it's a muscle that hasn't been built yet. And there's a little bit of fear, I think, in most people's minds, because truthfully, I don't think most people know the borrower experience and what the borrower thinks is happening. I think we assume if the loan is going well and everything is going to sync up and we're going to close on time, I think everybody assumes everybody's happy. And if they are, then it's like, why don't you validate that? Right. And if you get a validation that they're happy whenever you do it, and I agree with you multiple times, then you have that validation, and then you know that I'm okay to ask. I've been validated, right? That's number one. Number two is there's a little bit of play on what if they say no? Well, they're already saying no. You just don't know they're saying no because you haven't had a conversation with them. And no news is relevant to the idea that you have a closed loan borrower who's going to be inactive. If you don't have that, it's like we've got a guy right now, his team makes 300 calls a day to their database. They have 21,000 people in their database. They fund about $300 million a year, and they have 6 referral points for every loan in process with every borrower. 6. Okay. And they generate these reviews every day. They're doing about 50 mortgage reviews a day. And it's unbelievable how many realtors forgot that buyer bought a home through them 3 years ago, right? Sure. So I think that's the other issue. And I guess I think the other thing is we don't have this spirit of running to the customer, running towards the customer, embracing the customer, loving on the customer. And I think one of the marked changes that people make in their head is when we go from a loan number to a family, when we start to realize that there's 3 or 4 hearts in that home, maybe more, maybe less, but that changes the whole perspective. Like I want my buyers who I blow their mind and my team helps them with their in-service experience. I want them to become part of my sales team. I want them to be engaged with me forever. I want to be able to do 3 or 4 or 5 loans for them in the next 20 or 30 years. This idea of generational lending. I've got about 1,000 people right now whose kids are in their late 20s, early 30s. These clients of mine are 60, 65 years old, and their kids are taking over the business. That's generational lending. Who are they funding loans for? They're funding loans for the parents of the kids that the dad did loans for during his career. And it's super special to realize that the heartbeat of a database is the data, and the heartbeat of value is, are you connecting with them? Mm-hmm. And I think that we've got to do a better job in that, because the consumer centric, which is what I call it. It's not consumer direct. It's not TV advertising, but the consumer centric model is, I know Taylor, Taylor's got about 1,000 really, really great people in her podcast, or 10,000 really great people in her podcast. If she liked what we did together, then she can introduce me to a couple of people in that group that I could then add value to, and go on and on and on. And that's the deal. And we got to get after it, because it's not going to change. Technology is not going to let it change. So you got to get the relationships in sync quickly.
I know. Well, I want to go back really fast, because you mentioned the buzzword fear. And to me right now, we know prospecting is at the forefront. Okay. And what do we think about agent prospecting? The first, it's fear of rejection, overcoming the obstacle of I've already been working with this lender. I don't need any right now. How are you coaching people through that?
Well, I think the answer that comes to mind very simply is that fear is only a word, and the human being gets to attach the emotion to that word. And there's 3 stages that most people go through when they think about fear. First is the age-old consideration that fear stands for false experiences appearing real. Why would you be reluctant to make a call if the call has not happened? And the answer is either because of rejection in the past and bringing that into the present, or you don't feel you have enough value to bring into the equation. And so when you have call reluctance, you become busy in other areas. You don't go hunting, or you lower the standard of who you go hunting on, because it's easier to call on realtors that sell 1 home every 3 months than it is to call on realtors that sell 1 home a day or 2 homes a week. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, if we're able to understand what you and I were just talking about and the value proposition, I can literally today get on the telephone. I could call my friend Ron Songrath at First American Title, and I could say, Ron, in the month of June, I want to go face to face with 30 of the top realtors in Costa Mesa, California. Can you produce a list of the top 60 for me? And obviously you're gonna echo, your confidence in me as a mortgage professional. I'm going to continue to give you title orders to the extent I can control those. And here's my standard. I want integrity. I want top 20%. I want this market. I want these types of loans. Okay, great. So now what I do is I get all these names from Ron, and I can either send a video, make a phone call, put something of value in an overnight pack, whatever I want to do. I can contact 1 agent a day, and then I can follow up. Now, why would I not be as concerned or afraid following up now? And why might I not even have a little bit of call excitement? Well, if I call you, Taylor, it's Todd Duncan with Atlantic Bay. Hey, was given your name by Ron Songrath over at First American Title. He wanted me to introduce you to an exciting business building idea. Take about 60 seconds right now. Is this a good time? And you're either going to say, sure, or you're going to say, what's it about?
Right.
You're not probably going to say no, because Ron and you do business together. Mm-hmm. So then you say yes. And I go, so Taylor, I'm bringing a new product to the marketplace. It's called the Consumer Referral Program. It's basically designed for agents that we are referred to like you. And what it simply does is bring you buyers and sellers every single month for you to sell real estate to, or sell real estate for, or both. Do you like that idea? And you're probably going to say, I do. And I'm going to go, great. When's a good time for me to swing by your office, or, have a Zoom with you, whatever you'd like to do. You guys can figure that piece out. I want to learn what you look for in your lending partnerships. And I want to share with you what this product looks like. And if it all makes sense, I'd love to entertain looking at a business partnership. When's a good time to meet? That's all I have to do today. And I just get that in the can. I memorize it. I understand it. And we're off to the races. Now I sit down and we do the high trust interview. And if anybody wants to download 2 playbooks from our website, just go to toddduncan.com and download the high trust interview, and then download the Talk Less, Sell More white paper. It gives you 6 question categories for real estate agents, financial planners, whomever, that your competition doesn't understand and they don't ask. And if you download those documents, you can learn how to have a 20-minute conversation called the Lost Leads conversation with a real estate agent. And at the end of that, it's going to be worth between $200,000 and $400,000 for each realtor that you have that conversation with. Your only requirement is that as soon as you get the thing going, you're going to have to make sure that you're doing the +1 that we talked about earlier, and you're doing shared database marketing, which means I'm going to start doing mortgage reviews for all of your buyers and sellers that you've sold real estate to and for. And then the other thing you asked way at the front of our call that I would kick into gear now is when that interview's over, 25 minutes later, and you guys are engaged in a new relationship, then I'm going to set a 3-month, every week, 15-minute partnership planning call with you. I'm going to do it right in front of you on my phone. I'm going to take my phone out. I'm going to say, you said yes. I'd like to meet with you every Friday, 1 o'clock, 15 minutes for the next 12 weeks. Make sure we get our relationship off to the right start. Could you do every Friday at 1 o'clock? And she's going to look at me and she's going to say, yes. I'm going to hit recurring. I'm going to do it Friday. I'm going to do it 1 o'clock. I'm going to alarm it for 12:45. And then I'm going to hit where it says invite people. I'm going to hit invite people and I'm going to type in her email address. I'm going to send it to her. She has to accept it in front of me. And now I have 12 weeks of follow-up that's already built in. That's what you need to do today. Because if you're not doing that and you're not following up, everybody knows that, you go 2 or 3 weeks without following up, the deal's over. Right. And you got to do that. You got to understand that. And that today is what 99% of LOs are simply not doing. And we got to get back to that because this is the mother lode. Right. I tell people all the time, if you're not in touch, you're out of touch. And I tell people all the time that you can make a fortune with relationships. You can make an income with transactions, but you can make a fortune with relationships. So that's kind of the vibe I'm trying to get out there right now.
I love it. That's so much knowledge right there. So I appreciate you so much. I have to ask you, because you're on Lending Forward. How are you lending forward this year?
I've decided that I want to impact 1 million mortgage professionals around the globe. We have about 5 million clients. And if I can impact another 1 million in the next year with that kind of forward intention, that would be huge for us. And it's a hairy, audacious goal. I think the other thing that I'm doing to kind of lend forward is to share without expectation. And I will really want to pop into people's hearts and minds about what's possible. And I want to create moments. I want to create magical moments for people that allow them to feel blessed, full of gratitude, joyful, happy. And I think everybody watching this, Taylor, if we could make the human experience come alive in a deep and real way and start talking about emotion more than loans and products, we'd make a huge difference. I had a lender the other day that took the talk less, sell more concept, and he was meeting with a husband and wife team that were moving from Anchorage to Portland, Oregon. And he got on Zoom with them and he looked at them and said, I really appreciate the referral from Jenny, who was his real estate agent. She knows I do nothing but to make dreams come true for buyers. I'd like to begin by asking you a simple question. What would it mean to you guys to own a home? That was it. That was the question. What would it mean to you guys to own a home? What would it mean to you to own a home? 10 words, right? And he paused, and within about 10 seconds, the wife was tearing up, and 5 seconds behind her was him tearing up. And the wife looked at Tim, the LO, and said, if you could get us a home, we would be the first couple in the history of our family to own real estate. And they just got these tears going down, right? And Tim let that moment just hang for 30, 45 seconds or so. And then he said, I'm going to make that happen. Are you ready to get started? And they said yes. And 30 days later, the deal was closed, and he's gotten 17 referrals from them in the first 6 weeks after closing. My point is, we have got to get away from doing loans, and we have to get into changing lives, changing hearts, and understanding that humanity and transparency are more important than product and price. They all matter. But humanity and transparency, humanity is connection, transparency is truth. Okay. If I have those, then product and price are less of an issue. But if I lead with product and price and I never get humanity and transparency, my conversion rates will stay low, my call reluctance will be high, and it's just not the way the game's being played going forward.
Wow. 100% agreement with you. I think it's so important. So important. Well, thank you, Todd. It was a pleasure to talk with you today, and more to come.
More to come. Thank you, Taylor. I appreciate it very much. See ya.
Thank you. Thanks again for listening to the Lending Forward podcast powered by Atlantic Bay Mortgage Group. Don't forget to tune in next week and make sure you subscribe to our channel. Remember, we all play a part in lending forward. So go lend something forward today.